Hello and welcome into The Last Video Store, the show where I, Alexei will talk to a beautiful, interesting, exciting person about some of their favorite films in the style of an old school video store rental combo. And joining me in the store this week, we've got an excellent filmmaker who's just made what I would say is one of the best Australian films I've seen in the last couple of years. It is called Inside, and the filmmaker is Charles Williams. Now, producer Dave is sitting in the hot seat right now.
Hello, I'm honoured to be here, and it is very hot in this seat.
It actually is quite warm. The freaking aircon is conked out here, over here in Batuta, in the hottest day of the summer.
Oh yeah, 45 plus, I think, today.
Oh my God.
Great day to watch a movie.
Absolutely, that's what I'm going to say. Get a portable DVD player, sit in the pool somewhere, get the DVD player on the edge of the pool, and watch something exciting like Splash.
Yeah.
And you love movies too. Give your
love
letterbox a
movies.
shout out, mate.
My letterbox is Dyor Dave, D-Y-O-R Dave. Follow me if you want to see me log a movie every now and then. But maybe the more followers I have, the more incentive I'll have to log
That's
them.
it. We want to compare to watch more movies. But I'm so excited to have Charles Williams in today. Fantastic director. Inside is his feature film directorial debut. He previously has this prestigious honor of winning a Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival for his short film, All These Creatures. And a lot of the DNA from Inside can be found in All These Creatures. Inside is a crime thriller. It is about a young man who's transferred from juvenile to adult prison. Mel is taken under the wing of both Shepard, Australia's most despised criminal, played by Cosmo Jarvis in this incredible performance, and Warren, who is Guy Pearce, a soon-to-be paroled inmate. The paternal triangle that forms between them becomes their undoing. Now, I was very lucky over the weekend to host a bunch of screenings with Vincent Miller, this young, incredible actor who's the lead of this film, with Guy Pearce and with Charles Williams. And Inside is exactly the kind of film that I love and the type of film that I think we do uniquely well here in Australia. It communicates through a language that we all understand, which is genre cinema, in particular this being crime thriller cinema, to ponder really powerful emotions, express an empathy and a humanism that I think is deeply resonant and quite rare in this genre. Incredible cast, like we said, Guy Pearce, recent Oscar nominee for The Brutalist. I think he might even be better in Inside.
Wow.
One of his best performances.
Will that be 2026 Oscar nominee then?
I hope so.
Yep.
Oh my God. Imagine if I soothsayed that into the world right now. Cosmo Jarvis is amazing in this, and newcomer Vincent Miller can hold his own up against them. This film comes out in Australian cinemas on the 27th of February. Spread the word, everybody. I think you'll love this film, and I think you'll get a lot out of our chat, is what I'm trying to say right now. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, feel free to enjoy this chat. I don't believe in spoilers. I don't access them too much. We're talking a lot about the craft. We're talking a lot about performance craft and directing craft. So not a plot heavy chat, but make sure you go see this film. I think you'll be rewarded.
Yeah. Watch it, then watch the podcast first, then watch the film, then watch the podcast again, then the film again.
And then also buy any products we talk about in our ads, no matter what they are.
Yes, exactly.
But before we jump in, what we do on this show, we're going to talk to him about his favorite movies and stuff, old school video store rental combo. I'm going to give him a recommendation based on his taste. If you want that same treatment, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on a YouTube comment, some shit like that, and let us know what your new release is and your 2 all-time weekly favorites, and I'll give you a recommendation. We got one here from Apple Podcasts right now. Dave, give us a read.
That is right. This comes from Mitch Boz, and it is a, if I may say, well-deserved 5-star review.
Oh, thank you, darling.
Yeah. Mitch says, such a great idea for a podcast. Love the structure. Every time I listen, it takes me back to the many hours I would spend on a Friday night at my local Video Easy. Alexei is one of Australia's greatest soldiers of cinemas.
Yes.
I salute you.
Thank you. I'm decorated, hero.
I could listen to that man talk cinema all day long. In fact, I pretty much do. I always think about what my combo would be, and it changes every time. But today I'm going with his new release is The Seed of the Sacred Fig from 2024.
Love this movie. Saw it at Sydney Film Festival. It would be one of my favorite newer movies too.
It's not even on my radar, but I will watch it now.
Put it
Thanks
on
for the
radar.
recommendation, Mitch.
Mitch, we love you for it.
His first weekly is Happiness from 1998.
One of my very favorite movies. It's a very intense comedy.
Yep.
You force you to laugh at things you probably don't feel comfortable laughing about.
Ooh, okay.
The last time I watched this, I was I had to get a train back to Sydney with my partner. It was the only movie I had on my laptop, and we watched it in full view of the public on a train, and it made it an even more squeamish experience.
That's great. I heard that's actually the best way to watch any movie, really.
I actually say this movie, it might be. Like, it's an intense way to watch it.
Yep, okay. And his other weekly is Dead Presidents from 1995.
I thought you were going to say Deadpool.
No, yeah, Deadpool from 1995. The original.
One of the greatest heist films of all time. I am going to jump off probably Dead Presidents a little bit of Seed of the Sacred Fig, where it kind of uses genre to communicate something very interesting to an audience. But this is a movie from John Woo, 1990. This is Bullet in the Head. 3 childhood friends from the slums of Hong Kong flee to wartime Saigon after accidentally murdering a gang leader, but their troubles only escalate. This is just such a sick genre film. It also stars Tony Leung, one of the greats. Check it out, Bullet in the Head. Mitch, I think you'll love it. And I did check your letterbox, you haven't seen it, so there we go. But thank you so much for joining us. Let's get into our chat with Charles Williams.
Video Store.
Charles, thank you for making the trip out here to Batuta and joining me inside the Last Video Store.
Thanks, I love Batuta.
Well, we love you too, man. And usually I ask people about the video store they grew up with, but you have served your time in a video store. You've been a soldier of cinema on the front lines, in the aisles. Tell me about the store you worked at, brother.
I was 13 and I had to lie about my age because I think that was not allowed.
Just on the cast.
I was on the cast, but I think you had to be 15 or something.
I think it's 14 and 9 months or something.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I'd already been working a job lying about my age as well at a butcher by that age. So I went to...
that is hectic to be a butcher. Is the one you lied about to work
when you're
in.
like 12. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, it was a real upgrade to go to a video store.
Yeah,
I didn't have
think
to
so.
kill anything there.
Yeah.
Except, some darlings of
Exactly.
cinema. I worked at Country...
Free tapes or free mints. What do you want, I guess,
Definitely the free tapes. I worked at Country Flicks, which is obviously not a franchise.
Wow, but it's a great name.
Yeah,
it's a great name.
And that was like at the end of the little town that I grew up in. And then...
Whereabouts is it?
That
Like
was in
regional?
Kilmore.
Kilmore.
I came from Lansfield, which is much more farm-like, and Kilmore's like a really tiny highway town.
Yeah.
And this was at the end of the town.
Wow.
And so I'd ride my little pushy down there and go to work. And then they became Video Busters after a few years. They're sold to the franchise, and the Christmas parties got better. But other than that, it was just a name tag and a t-shirt change.
What was it like? Because it's like a regional video store. Like,
Yeah.
what was the selection like? Was it, especially because it's not a chain, so chains you kind of have expectations going to be, it's big movies, big releases. But for a country town, independent, mom and pop style video store, what was the range?
I mean, it was very, very, very mainstream. Like, I remember when Reservoir Dogs came out, that was like our house.
Wow. Okay.
That's how mainstream it was.
Yeah.
It was like, and me recommending it to someone when I was like 14, they were like, the owners were like, it's pretty hardy. I mean, it was ultra mainstream.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like, and as a kid, if you're 14 seeing that and recommending that to you, was it satiating your burgeoning cinephilic urges and stuff in there?
No, I mean, you just got little crumbs of something, like a Reservoir Dogs or something, that you just knew that there was something on the horizon. Like, there's something else out there that's not just this like made for TV movie. And I like mainstream movies fine, but you just knew that there was a whiff of something else. There's some other movies that get made somewhere. And, and this was just like a little peek over the occasional Scorsese or something. Like, there's something else going on there.
You're like, bringing out the dead?
Yeah. Oh, no, that was well before that time.
And when you start like getting that peak, where do you start finding those deeper cuts or those more kind of offbeat features?
It took a long time before that happened. I mean, what was great is when I was maybe about, let's say, year 10, I tapped into this thing, and they called it by different names, but it was the Victorian Access Collection or Cinemedia or something. And the state of Victoria had their own collection of films. And you could become a member if you were on like a low-income healthcare card or whatever you get, you for like $65 annually. And it's unlimited films. And if you're in a country town, they'd ship them to you, 6 at a time, to your local library. And after 2 weeks, you just return them and there'd be another box waiting. And they had every VHS you can imagine. And so I'd send them a list of, because you don't know what's in stock and not, you send them a list of a few hundred movies and they'd randomly just pull out what's in. They'd ship you these 6 movies. You'd have them for 2 weeks and you'd ship them back. And that was when you were like, the floodgates kind of opened up.
Yeah.
And
how did you even find out about that?
I don't know. I have no idea. I was movie nerding my way into wherever I was finding out.
If you mention it to enough people, someone will go, here's the solution for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like writing lists of Santa Claus you're describing.
It's exactly what it was.
But every 2 weeks you get a
I'm
little drop
embarrassed.
off.
I'm a little embarrassed. The nerddom goes deep. Like, I would occasionally, and I did this to the Criterion Collection, I would occasionally write them a letter and say, hey, you don't have these movies. I wrote the Criterion Collection to some of the movies of one of my recommendations today.
Whoa, okay. Well,
and then one day when
they
bought my short film as well,
Yeah.
and that was probably one of the biggest highlights.
So they put their program on the Criterion channel, the short film?
Yeah, and they pay you for it, which is even better. But that was a big. It was like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, it's a short film that won Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
All These Creatures.
Yeah,
beautiful film.
Thank you.
And it's like you can definitely see the starting point of your feature, which I'll be petitioning the Criterion Collection to start putting in, and that shall be one of the bonus features.
I'll use
there.
your name, and I'll just
Please.
be writing them, going, you have to.
I'm so glad you said that because I have fully done that as well. Like I remember. I had to like email This is so lame. I hope this gets cut out of the podcast. I would have to say it. But like I had like bought a Criterion, the box was smashed up or whatever.
Yeah.
So I had to email going like, yes, I live in Australia, so it takes me too long to purchase yada yada yada. But also in the follow-up email, I just said, also, have you thought about bringing Jules Dassin's Greek movies into the collection, such as Never on a Sunday? And they go, I never heard back from them in that one. I go, okay, well, I'll leave that out there in the world. But Charles, I want to get into your picks. I'm going to send you around the store, pick up some of your favorite movies to talk about, including a new release film that you have directed and written, a beautiful film called Inside. We'll talk about those, and then it'll be upon me to bestow upon you. I'm stumbling right now because I actually am very nervous because I have to try and recommend you a movie you haven't heard of or seen. Maybe you've heard of it. I'm going to lower all the stakes for myself right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully recommend a movie that might be new to you in some way, and if not that, the dear audience, hopefully it's new for you then. But you've served your time. You're sending freaking emails as a kid to try and get all these movies in. I'm sure
I'm setting the bar high.
I'm setting
it's
the
all
bar
right. There's
way
plenty
high.
of movies I haven't seen. I'm sure.
But I'm also going to give you 2 recommendations because that is the staff pick. If you worked in a video store, you get a little bit extra.
Great.
So if you've seen both of them, fucked, man.
New release.
Well, let's get straight into it. Your new release film, Inside. I think this is a magnificent film. The exact kind of film that I really love. Australian crime thriller. I was lucky enough over the weekend to host a bunch of Q&As with you and Guy Pearce and Vincent Miller stars.
Crime.
I think that's kind of where I want to start with this film is the performances are just sublime. You've got these 3 really interesting lead performances of Vinnie Miller, Guy Pearce, and Cosmo Jarvis. These are such different actors, such different frequencies, such different acting styles. Can you talk about like collaborating with those actors and I guess the different processes to bring each of those performances to life?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the fun of when you write a movie that's got like a love triangle or just a triangle, is you want to find really different dynamics for each person. They're not just different characters, and you're not just really casting for acting ability. You also need very different energies from each of them. Once I cast Guy, you're like, all right, that's one cornerstone here, but you have to cast in concert with Guy as well, particularly for Cosmo's character, but even for Vinny's. I mean, Vinny, for his role, it was I knew I needed a very, very specific nature and like a soul, really.
He's a very young actor, young character.
Well, yeah, he was 15 when I cast him, and for an 18-year-old. But I opened up the doors to anyone, whether they'd acted before or not, from the ages of 14 to 30. As long as I could conceivably imagine them as 18, because there's not, there's some things you can direct, but there's also just how watching someone on screen and being curious about what they're thinking and having this sense of curiosity about them is not really something you can manufacture. And Vinny just had that, and then, he had this innocence because of his youth, and therefore it doesn't have to play like he's innocent, and you can add some more jagged edges to the character. And then Cosmo, again, like a really different. You needed a different physicality. You needed a different presence. You needed something that felt like you were unsure about, that felt a bit dangerous, but also so he doesn't have to play any of that. That the character is soft and wants to be loved and seen kindly. And then, of course, naturally, each of those actors just have the complete opposite working style and what they need from you. So you just sort of become three completely different directors for each of them, which is fun. That's part of the fun is adapting and finding new ways to get the best out of each person and help them in ways that they need.
It sounds like it's like that kind of exciting challenge of filmmaking.
It really is, yeah. I think when I was much younger, I was much more. I still obsessed about sound design and cinematography and everything, but I think the technical aspects was all my obsession when I was younger, and largely because there's less insecurity there. You know that if you set up a certain shot, you're gonna get that.
There's answers to those questions. Yeah.
But if you want to focus on performance, like there's a lot of you're in a much more vulnerable place. But as I've gotten older, that's what I'm most interested in, not just in doing, but the movies that I love are the ones where you just kind of can't believe what you're watching.
It's something extra, it's like The Alchemy,
The Alchemy, yeah.
More than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, you watch a movie and you're like, where the fuck did they find that person? And you just can't believe what they're delivering and how connected they are, and that's so exciting. Can
I talk about, I like the way you put it, like you're a different director with each of those actors. Yeah. Can you talk about, specifically with each one, the processes it takes? Because one thing that came up in the Q&As that was, a delightful surprise for me was, even with Vinny, this young actor, you said you provided him with a different script that, either withheld things, only gave him the information he needed. Can you talk about, that? And I guess with the other two performances, the different kind of skills or different kind of schemes or situations you gave them, or direct differences in directing?
Yeah, I think that you can definitely know too much as an actor, and you can be overburdened. Directors, I think, sometimes overshare stuff that actually is confusing. And with Vinny, it was like, here's a script for you that also was a bit more novelistic, and it was only his scenes, but it also just had a lot of prompts that he could, if he was reading a scene and preparing, he could have all these other thoughts of what do you think he means by that? Or maybe this, and suggestions, really directions of when he says that, are you thinking to try this or try that? Or not
almost
necessarily
dictating. Prose, but
a little bit
suggestive?
Interior prose, but try to make it suggestive so that you're not just dictating how to do it, so that you can go with his instincts on it, but prompt where they might be. And when you're saying this, do you really think you mean that? And is that true? And there's just a lot of that stuff, and he really was excited by it. And that's right for him. That wouldn't be right for what Guy needs for with Guy, it was, some of this stuff I keep a little bit private because it's
don't want to give away too much.
Well, no, it's just so you try to. It's a intimate relationship. Yeah. And with Guy, I think we just chatted for about a year, and not all of it was. Most of it wasn't even about the film or the character. You talk about your mum, you talk about whatever, and then at some point you're relating your personal life in ways that are unconscious, and there's a way that sometimes going right at a thing can feel indelicate or unproductive, and you might want to find your way around it. And that was there was something like that with working with Guy. And then with Cosmo, it was really sort of the opposite. It was going right at it, and also very oddly talking very analytically and very thematically, which is something that is usually not at all helpful.
When you say analytically, what do you mean by that?
It means you dive right into the themes of the film. You're talking much more like a writer or director would kind of naturally. You're really analysing like what is this film about and what is the metaphor of this and that stuff that is just, like I said, it's like with actors, it's like talking like that is like watching them drown and then describe the water. It just doesn't help. But Cosmo's different. Cosmo really loves that stuff, and then he just chews it all up and then adds it into his stuff, and then he'll try it and it becomes a bit of a physicality and an idea, and then you play around a little bit with, is that the voice or is this, you do a little bit of that, but mostly he's just very rigorous and very, very immersive.
Yeah,
but it comes from a place that's quite intellectual before he.
So it's almost like how he becomes a conduit for the themes of the film and how to express the film as a whole through his performance.
Yeah, well, also it was appropriate for that character because that character, more than any, embodies the themes of the film in a very direct way, given the drastic kinds of things that he's done to himself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of embodying of the things. I don't want to give away the whole movie, but it's all in there.
Yeah.
And so he really wanted to go into the character from that angle. And then, he's in his Australian accent for 3 months and he's deep in it. And
I mean, it's riveting. It's all three are riveting performances, but that one is like, it's kind of unbelievable. Just the way you're able to kind of capture this, it feels entirely real. It feels entirely authentic. I didn't realize it was him, like for the movie, and I knew that he was in the film, and I was like,
"No, you're not alone.
This guy,
you're not alone." Other people have told me, they took him a while to go, "Oh, that's him."
Yeah.
And there really was, like, because the film has.
I'm like waiting for him to come into the movie. Go,
where
I've
is
seen
he?
him for like 15, 25 minutes when I realized. Yeah,
it's transformative. I mean, there was most of the. Prison officers in the film are real officers currently working, and most of the inmates in the film are former inmates. But that story I told you was true, is that one of the officers who knew he had inmates everywhere told me that he was going to approach me to say that Cosmo was one that they were like, we can't, he's too much.
You have to get rid of this
And he's
guy.
like, they thought he was the real thing and he was too far, and I'd like pushed it too far.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then I was told that no, he's this English actor. And it's very sweet. It's a
He's
that's
a
compliment.
singer-songwriter, guys.
That's
He's
exactly.
normal.
That's right. Haven't you heard his work?
Haven't you seen his Like a version? The guy's cool. But I think let's get into that, because I think the thematics of this film so deeply resonating. Like, this is a very humanist take on like a crime thriller. It's made with so much empathy, and it's so much about the prison system and like who's in there, why are they in there, how are they trapped in there, what kind of people are there. I guess could you kind of talk about that thematic and like using genre to communicate something much more thoughtful or much deeper and something more resonant?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of really just grew out of or extrapolated from the short film. It was, like the short film being, so successful, there's the impulse to just stretch it out and shoot a feature the next year, and it's just a longer version of the short.
Use it as like a literal proof of concept for something bigger.
That's right, but I've never seen a feature that did that well. Especially if it's a good short, it seems like it's good because that's the length.
Yeah.
And also, there's probably some masochism to me wanting to do everything the hardest possible way. So I was like, let's dig into all the most painful, difficult parts of the short film and some of the aesthetics that I enjoyed playing with and relationships and whatever. Take those things and then go, what would this be if it was a movie that I wanted to see in a cinema? How would I translate themes of, how we reckon with people that have caused damage in our lives and the damage we may have caused, and how accountable we are for some of these things and what mitigating factors there are, is these kind of congenital conditions someone might have, or if they're disfigured by some, occurrence in their life, does those factors change how you feel about them or how culpable you hold them for the damage they've caused? And at what level doesn't that matter? What's the limit to your ability to have compassion to somebody, and how much should you have? Like, is there a point where you're like, well, I don't care what happened to them. That's too much. And all of that stuff they were just things that I was always dwelling on, I think I probably still am for most of my life.
Yeah.
And, how much control you have about the person you become. There's a lot of stuff here. And it grew into being a prison setting because, like, how could that not? That just feels like, in the 4 years that I was researching it more and also having family members that had some prison in their lives or whatever, it's front of mind every day in prison. They're talking, it's like the number one subject. How do I rewire myself? How do we change? Can we,
Is rehabilitation possible?
Is it even possible?
Yeah.
And is there one mechanism like Guy's mechanism
Yeah.
of like pragmatic existentialist behavior change programs or Cosmo's version, his character, the spiritual path? Does one work better than the other? Do either of them work? So all of these things were just there, particularly if you don't make it a prison genre.
Yeah.
Specifically, if it's a prison world, like, the genre of prison is always about people wanting to escape.
Yeah.
Whether it's Latrue or,
Shawshank
or, every
Birdman of Alcatraz,
that's
everything.
right. It's
Yeah.
like literal escape, not any other kind. And also corruption of authority, which, you see. And you see both of those even in the very highbrow genre, like
Yeah.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You literally want to escape and the authority's corrupt. And that's all good, but I wasn't interested in either of those themes. And so prison was the setting, and one where it was key to get a modern prison as well, so you weren't dwelling in like the environment as a kind of
Like pastiche even. Like
you just didn't want to use the environment as dread.
Yeah.
Look how scary it is, we're in prison. If anything, you wanted the opposite, like, oh, this is really open and bright.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're in like purgatory.
Or community center.
Community center, yeah. And that's its own unnerving feeling.
Yeah. Prison becomes a society in this film.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to talk about authority figure because, like, guards are absent basically in this movie. It's not like, there's this second class of people, this extra class of people. Authority, if anything in this, is moderately helpful.
Yeah, and it's true to the real prisons. They have a ratio of 4 officers to 80 inmates. Except for juvenile, where if you have 80 inmates, you have 80 officers. You have 1-to-1.
Yeah.
So at the start of the film, when you see Vinny leave juvenile, that's the most high security you see.
Yeah.
Every door is like double locked as though you're going into a submarine or something. And he's tailed by all these officers. But medium security, you've got guys that have killed people everywhere, and there'll be 80 inmates to 2 officers or to 4 officers. So it's just bringing the truth of that environment into the film.
Yeah, there's so much authenticity in this. I think before we move on, the thing I really like to talk about is like there is this spiritual aspect to the film, and it is in all 3 of those lead performances, those 3 like point of view characters, or not point of view characters, 3 lead characters. Okay. And then the way that's kind of expressed for Vinny, who is this young character who's kind of at a fork in his life between these 2 different opposing forces of Guy Pearce and Cosmo Jarvis's characters. The one being a very more literal spiritual journey, the other one being a more internal existential spiritual journey. And I think the way that you express it to Vinny as like the POV character, the perspective character, it's like this really elegant spiritual feeling of like memory being so sense-based. Like there's something about that of like the way that he experiences memory and flashback feels so organic and so like from the way that memories feel. Like you just get a flash of something, you get taken back. Sometimes you are literally taken back in that memory in a sense. Can you talk about like, I guess, how does those things that feel so organic and so natural when you're watching as a film, how do they take shape from the page to then the final product on the screen as well?
It's really hard. It's a bit of I'd like to say that I just know it all and I write it and then there it is. But with things like that need to feel organic, there's no other way to do them but organically. So I'll have a construction of it on the page, but then I'll also stray from it a bit in filming, and you'll find other things and you'll go, wait a minute, that's an interesting moment. If I film that from there, I could always join that edit to something in the modern day. It's quite a fluid process, and it becomes more so in the edit where, the flashbacks, you don't want them to feel like they're plot driven or that you're teasing a big secret. You know, that's the thing I didn't want, of like, oh, there's a big secret reveal coming. So you have to follow a sensory feeling, which sound design is a big part of, music is to some extent a big part of, and yeah, you also want it not to be separated in in quotation marks. So you change aspect ratios or black and white, or that was the early conversation, was
a
like
twinkling harp to send you back
send
down.
you back,
Yeah.
diddly-doo, diddly-doo, diddly, you know, the Wayne's World thing. No, you want it to feel, I mean, you know, memories are not, we create them now. If I have a memory now, I'm making it now. I think I'm recalling it, but they're really here. They're now. And you want it to feel in the film that you're not traveling anywhere. These memories are here, and they may be somewhat unreliable. You know, I mean, the film doesn't pull the rug on you with that stuff, but you know that you're in someone's body and they're barely inside of their own memory. They're just sort of floating through it, because the memories are sometimes unpleasant and you're sort of a bit out of your body. You have to just submit to the fact that that's going to be a process of like try and see in the edit.
Yeah, I mean, it works so beautifully well.
Thanks.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that find like inspiration, like in how one can even achieve those kind of feelings. It just works so beautifully. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk about, because we've talked about this movie so much over the last few days. I'll be remiss not to like probably ask a bit more about like Guy Pearce, because it feels like right now, I'm sure you're feeling the same way, and quite privileged to feel this way, of like, there's never been a better time to be a Guy Pearce fan in this world. Can you tell us a little bit about like directing him, getting him on board the project, but then also, I guess, developing character with him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it started with like just, you know, when I write, I don't really think about any actors. You know, people always want you to pitch something that you're working on and say who's in it. But I try to just get all that out of my head, because if I start thinking about an actor, I'll start writing to their strengths, and then soon enough you're writing something they've done before. Yeah. And you're not giving them a chance to do anything. So once I'd written this, I was like having that moment, and the same with Cosmo's character, where you're like, oh fuck, like
who can even get to
who do I do now? And my first choice was Guy, because I hadn't seen him do anything that's so like you know, sort of like impulsive, self-sabotaging, self-centered. But I'd also felt like it's there somewhere. Not that he's those things, but he has access to that, and this sort of addictive personality. I was like, there's something there. Yeah. And then he read it and was like, yeah, this I don't know why, but I get this completely. Yeah. And yeah, and then you know, it's a sort of getting to know you process more than anything. Like talking about your personal lives, or, you know, and him wanting to know exactly where I come from with it. And we would just talk for about a year about, you know, little things and what little approaches or whatever. But you don't really punch into it hard with him until you're kind of doing it.
Until you're on set.
Yeah, I think he likes to be confronted with circumstances and know where it's all... Yeah, the location's going to change things for him. It's all going to change for him.
It's like you say, the instincts kick in.
The instincts kick in, but he sort of needs to... You can talk and talk, but he needs a bit to know what the haircut's going to be and the location's going to be. And it also helps a lot when you have other actors in concert that he knows he's going to work with and against, like Toby Wallace as well. I mean, I haven't mentioned Toby yet, but I mean, that's a very, very pivotal role and very pivotal... And I think he was the second person I cast after Guy. And I knew I needed someone with his level of ability, but also his ability to wrong foot Guy, not just the character, but, you know, that was going to make the dynamic of that scene. I needed somebody who was formidable. Yeah. And it's like, you know, you're not going to be acting here. Like you want that help. You want a real sense of on screen. We're not kidding around here.
And it's a great scene that plays with status as well between those two actors, those two performances. And it's interesting hearing Guy talk about it in the Q&As, because like something that is a quality that people attribute to him a lot is like this chameleonic. He can disappear into a character. You might not recognize him. And I think in this one, definitely he doesn't look like him, doesn't move like him. But the way that he kind of finds the voice in your character through dialogue, it's all there. It's this rhythmic speech. And you go, oh, that doesn't freaking sound like him at all.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Like for him, it was very that I remember early days, like he said, he was sort of wanting to change a few things in the dialogue, which I don't really mind at all. Like I don't, but then he realized that was making it work, that he's better off, that the language that I'd put in was a kind of access to the character, the way he'd start a thing and then undo himself. And then he was just a character to me that would change his mind halfway through a sentence. He'd go, I'm trying to do this, and then by the end of it contradict himself.
Yeah.
And there's a way that speech goes, the way that his inarticulateness, like he says to Toby, it's whatchamacallit, when they took my things out, and, hereditary, it's his inability to reach for something and his struggle to articulate himself.
Well, that is Inside. I absolutely adore this movie. Hopefully everybody goes to see it, because I think if you like this kind of show, you like thinking about film and thinking about genre cinema, this is a film that you will absolutely adore as well. Please go see it. Any final thoughts on your film? Any final things you want to share about it?
No, I mean, it's interesting you saying that about this kind of film, because, in some ways it's the kind of movie, not that I put in the same league, but it's the kind of movie that really drew me growing up away from what initially was a massive attraction to film as a kind of palliative thing of like, oh, this is great, I'm not terrified, this is a nice place to be. But then you started seeing these films with characters you couldn't quite understand and you wanted to.
Yeah.
And in the understanding of a character that was like, oh, I like him, oh, I don't like him. And whatever those stories were, and that they would set a premise of a kind of movie you thought it was going to be. And then you just kind of drift over here. And it would still satisfy the premise, but those are the movies that kind of made me watch and watch and watch again and felt compelling to me. So I hope the movie has some of that quality. And I hope that there's more movies like that quality that I get to watch.
Yeah.
Because I'm missing them a bit. I want to see movies where you have characters that just pull a movie over someplace else and and unimmediately you're not like on board with them, and they're not always going, look how likable I am. And
that's how I felt watching this. I go, I want to be all three of these guys. Which one do I pick to follow? I want to be like all of them. But that's Inside. I adore this film. Let's get into your weekly choices now.
Weekly.
So you've got two beautiful films here, and you have even found the boxes out here in the video store that belong in your name as well.
That's right. I dug deep into the back of the archives.
Yeah, from the home collection.
From the home collection, yeah. I'm spoiling it now. Yeah, the home collection archives to just really come in here just in case. So
where do you want to begin? Which film would you want to talk about?
I'm going to begin with Madame de, or the Earrings of Madame de, as it's released in the US. It's actually a better title, The Earrings of Madame de.
Drama.
The Earrings of Madame de, beautiful film by Max Offals.
Yeah.
I had not seen this before. This has been on my radar for a long time.
Yeah.
But you suggested it to me. I watched it in one word, exquisite. This is an absolutely exquisite film. But for those who haven't seen it, how would you describe this film? Like, what is a little summary from the back of the box, if you will?
Back of the box summary is that it's about a very superficial woman who's married to a general. And, he gives her jewels and then she pawns them, and then he pretends he doesn't know, and she's got more money, and there's a little game in their life, and she flirts with his friends, and it's all part of it, and he has a mistress. It's all very sophisticated, upper class. And then Vittorio De Sica, the great film director, is in the film, and they have a few coincidental meetings, and he's immediately charmed by her and into her, and then the general is like, oh, we're friends. Hey, go and take care of my wife for a little while. And there's a bit of she's a terrible flirt, Yeah. And the worst possible thing happens. And the worst possible thing is love,
Yeah.
And that's what kills you about it. It's like, love is treated in this film as like the worst thing. It's like a sickness. And it kills. It's just beautiful to feel that this woman who was so superficial about everything, and her husband who treated their relationship so carelessly, they all realize now they're reckoning with something that's out of their hands, because she now can't even get up and go out because she's sick with love for Vittorio De Sica's character. And I mean, I could talk about the movie forever because it's so extraordinary on every level. Technically, you know, it's like an era where the camera was just a blimp and you'd swear it was just calligraphy on a scene. It's just like, let's start on the candle and we'll go over there, and she'll be humming the score to the film that, you know, usually isn't written until post and while she's in the scene, and we'll go over here, and like the camera just whizzes around, so fluid. You never notice it because you're so into the movie. But the thing is, one of the reasons I thought I'll bring it in is there's a small, very long bow that I would think about this film in relation to Inside, which is that it's a triangle. And Danielle Daru is caught between two men of opposite natures. And just like Vinny's character Mel is caught between Guy and Cosmo. And it was a similar thing I would think about The Piano and these kinds of movies. Inside is a more feminine film than one would think.
Yeah.
And it's how those dynamics work and don't get tired out, and they don't seem too obvious, how those characters can evolve based on how they interrelate. And this film does it better than any movie. I mean, you know, I think there's an argument to be made it's the best film ever made, or one of them. It's starting to slip off everyone's list, which I don't know why, but
I think it's starting to come back, because
I
what I
hope
was
so.
reading was the reason I think it might even come back on my radar was in the Sight and Sound poll that was just in the last couple of years. I think Wes Anderson and maybe Edgar Wright or someone put it
That's
back in
good.
their list. So
well, he named a character after her in Tilda Swinton plays in the what is it, the hotel?
oh, Last Night in Soho.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry,
No,
the
no.
other one, the Grand Budapest
Grand
Hotel.
Budapest
So I was
Hotel.
thinking, got confused by two guys. That
Yeah,
put on the list.
the other one.
Yeah.
No, this is Madame D is the
Yeah.
character. But I mean, Andrew Saris would
Yeah.
just say it was the greatest film ever made, and it seems to be, and Max Ophuls in general, who's right up there with, you know, Hitchcock and Orson Welles and everyone
I
for his whole
read that.
filmography. You know, like
Yeah.
particularly his last 5 or 6 or 7 films are just fucking unbelievable.
I think the best way I would describe it is like it's a very delicate film.
Yeah.
And I love the way you talk about the camera feeling like a pen just going around. Because
Yeah.
the camera just feels so unconscious in its curiosity. Like there'll be these dance scenes where you're seeing them kind of waltzing around this dance room, and then the camera will just drift off and go, I want to see this guy putting out all the candelabras.
Yes, yeah.
And it just goes, oh, it's curiosity that's motivating the camera.
Yeah.
And it's allowing you to feel immersed in the space. And, you know, maybe that's another thing about your film as well. It's like there's this really immersive authenticity to it.
Yeah.
But then even when you're describing the plot sounds like a screwball comedy or a
Sure.
madcap comedy.
Exactly, yeah.
But then it's treated so delicately that the humor is still present. It's a funny movie.
Yeah, they have little slapstick bits in there.
Yeah.
You know, the way he meets her, it's all, but underneath it all,
It's just
it's the most
beauty.
devastating love story. It's like The Age of
Yeah.
Innocence or something. In fact, it might be the best double I ever saw. I saw this as a double once with this and The Age of Innocence.
Wow, now that
And
is
I was
a great
like,
double.
you know, you just like, I had to fucking put myself back together for a day or two. It's just devastating.
Yeah.
So,
The Earrings of Madame de Vestation, it should be called.
yes, that's exactly
I mean,
what
it's
it
a
should be.
worse title, but that, you know, you put a little bit in brackets, it's there. But even the title itself, it's a joke because that is a running gag motif throughout
Yeah.
it. Is you never learn this person's name.
Yeah,
You just
that's
put
right.
their surname.
That's right.
Because it just cuts away,
It cuts
or it's
off.
like a little delicate move of the camera, or a little bit of sound play.
Mm.
We just never hear her name, and there's no other reason for it to go, that's kind of funny. Like,
Yeah, it's like the story itself is just this sort of like trifling thing, and then it holds so much depth of all these very deep human emotions, and it's fun, but it does all of it like very lightheartedly. It's not a labored film, and it's not a tortured, heavy-handed film. It sort of tap dances across these relationships, but also just on a technical level, like you watch it and
Yeah.
I know what they were dealing with there in terms of dollies and cameras and
Yeah.
sound, and I just watch it and go, I have no fucking idea how they
They've
made
got
that.
bodybuilders lifting these cameras up. Like,
and they're
we
just
don't know
rearranging the
how.
room around the
Yeah.
camera as it goes. They're just like pulling the whole set apart and reconstructing it around the camera to get these shots. You know, it's and then there's mirrors and things everywhere. He's making every shot as hard as it could be, and making it look effortless. It's really something.
More than the sum of its parts, the Earrings of Madame de. One final thing, Victoria's De Sica, one of the great directors, The Bicycle Thieves, like truly one of the great filmmakers. I did not really know of him as an actor. Like I'd heard of him in movies, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd ever seen him in anything before. And reading that Max Ophuls was like nervous to even direct him in this.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's so interesting. Like just everything about this, I'm fascinated by. Now.
There should be a genre of movies where directors have cast other directors. That should be a letterbox
Close
somewhere.
Encounters of the Third Kind.
Close Encounters would be right up there. But, you know, like even we were talking the other day about David Lowery being in Queer.
Yeah.
You know, just like a little small role. It's a interesting genre.
Yeah. I
where
can't wait to
you
see him
know-
popping up with Kriv Stender's movie in a few years. That's what I'm hoping for. All right. That is The Earrings of Madame de. Great film. Beautiful. Thank you for your introduction to this film for me as well.
Thank you.
Let us get into your next pick. This is a movie that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
This is from director John Huston, Fat City.
Yeah.
Drama.
One of the best titles for a movie as well. But if people haven't seen this, this is a boxing picture.
Yeah.
But unlike anything you've ever seen
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that sense, it's a movie with like a tremendous amount of melancholy to it. It's almost like a miserable movie, but it's funny and it's pleasurable to watch. I adore this film. Watching it again, what really struck me is how hip John Huston has to be, because he has been making movies since like the golden age of Hollywood.
Yeah.
He's making like Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
And that is a hip movie back in the 1940s.
Totally, yeah.
This is 1972,
Yeah.
and he's making this a veteran of filmmaking.
Yeah.
He's making a movie in 1972 that feels so contemporary, so up to date, so up to times. Feels like that Bob Rafelson, like
Yeah.
5 easy pieces. It just slots so effortlessly into the American new wave. I don't know how he does it. The
Yeah.
guy's like probably 1,000 years old making this movie as well. But what is about Fat City that endures for you?
I mean, there's something that's so deterministic about these people and their lives that, you know, and it infected inside as well. It's a movie that I always feel as well. There's just such a compassion towards these people and the bad decisions they're going to make.
Absolutely.
And they're going to try not to. He's gonna tomorrow. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna get back. I'm gonna train. I'm gonna turn it all around. And you're there going, come on. And you watch his circumstances and you watch how hard, and you're like, this guy's never gonna make it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because he's a bad dude. And you know, you see it with this incredible performance by Jeff Bridges as well.
He's playing
You're
like 18 in
and
this
he's
movie.
fucking great in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, you know, Vinny as a young Jeff Bridges. You know, it ain't
Absolutely.
too far.
I think you're right, because
And,
it is like
you
that
know,
instinctual performance. It is
Totally.
like, it's all about casting. It's pretty unknown in this film.
Yeah. And Susan Terrell is devastating. Like, I've never seen anyone play a better alcoholic on
Yeah.
screen. Lee Remick is something special, but Susan Terrell kills you. And yeah, I mean, same with the book as well. The film's very faithful to the book. And it, you know, John Huston's movies, usually always the ones that he actually cared about, there's a real feeling of cynicism in his movies. But it's not a sad kind of cynicism. It's like...
And it's not without hope either. Like, you still feel hope for
but
these
you know,
characters.
his movies tend to be kind of a bitter cynicism and a slap on the back. You know, like even the ending of Treasure of the Sierra Madre, like
Yeah.
you're fucked. Oh well, let's start again. Kind
That's
of
a
thing.
lot in
That's
life.
life. That's your life. But here, the cynicism is not. It's not bitter. It's so compassionate, and it's like it's almost like the worst moment of the movie is when he actually wins.
Yeah.
You know, it's like everyone's a loser, everyone's losing all the time, and then he wins, and you're like,
It doesn't
what
feel
the
like victory.
Fuck was the point of that?
And it's also even a fight we go, you know, it doesn't feel like, oh, you don't feel the anticipation of who's going to win or what.
It's
you
not the
don't know
point.
who it's going to be.
Yeah, you think
don't-
it's the genre, but it's like the prison genre. You like, this doesn't have the hallmarks of any
Mm-hmm.
boxing movie. And sure enough, you know, he wins, and then the camera just sits there, and this is the lead character, and he
Yeah.
just walks out, and the camera just keeps sitting there,
Yeah.
and then slowly the loser comes out, and the camera waits for the loser to walk.
Yeah.
Because that's what the movie's about.
Yeah.
It's about whoever's occupying that position. So it's a heartbreaker, but in a very sweet, sentimental way.
In a
Not
very
sentimental, melancholic way.
Melancholy, yeah, I think it's a
Yeah,
right word.
compassionate.
Totally compassionate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the way that you kind of look at these characters, it's almost the scene following this one that really kills me, because you've got Stacey Keach, one of the greatest faces a camera's ever been
Yeah,
pointed at,
yeah.
in this lead role, breakout lead role as well, and him as this kind of like no hope boxer, and then you've got Nicholas Colasanto, best known as Coach from Cheers.
Yeah.
as his coach.
God,
in
he's
this.
good too. He's so good.
He's like the realest performance in this movie.
Totally.
And he's just an incredible actor. And there's this moment where he's in the car and he's believed in this guy. He's like, they're friends. He wants him to do well. He's trying to get him off the streets in a way, get him back in shape, get him back in the ring. And he's invested in it. And then the moment that's just such a heartbreaker where you should feel, I guess, a hatred or betrayal to that character. But you just go, no, I believe what he's done. Like, he tried so hard for him.
Yeah.
It just works. It just devastating beauty in that moment.
Yeah, there's no bad guys in the movie. Like, everyone is doing their best
Yeah.
and everyone's failing. And it sort of kills you. It's like sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
Even the great, and maybe the scene after, the new boyfriend that moves back in, or maybe it was the boyfriend she used to have that went
Yeah.
to prison.
He comes back
He
out.
comes back and he goes to collect his stuff. Stacey Keach goes to collect
Mm.
his stuff, and the guy's like, "Well, I see a man stuff his stuff," and he's
Yeah.
like, "He's got it here, and don't pay her no mind.
Yeah.
She's just a juice head."
There's
That's because
even-
of her unhappy childhood and all that shit.
Yeah.
I can't do nothing about that. Like, it's just
It's
like this.
poetic.
It's
Poetic,
poetic. It's just
yeah.
like, oh man, all you can do is just like go, fuck. It's these characters are just not gonna. They're not gonna get through easily.
Yeah. And it's like, even in that moment, it becomes even more powerful. That last thing is like, and funny when he's like, "Oh, actually, I don't. I'm wearing your old shirt. Let me take it off and give it to you."
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Fat City, absolutely amazing movie. Huge recommendation if you've never seen it. But let's get into the final part of the podcast.
Staff pick.
Very excited.
We're at the staff pick recommendation where I have to bestow upon you a movie, hopefully new to you. If not, I don't know. I'm trying to lower the stakes because truly, I think I'm nervous. Hopefully, I can give you something, but I'm going to give you two movies. And I kind of looked at Inside for this, and it's this thing that kind of kept coming up, like this idea of triangle or three really interesting performances that somehow coalesce despite how different they are in their stances or in their method or the way they fit together. So I've got two of them for you. One from the 70s and one from the 90s. These are both like kind of crime pictures. Where would you like to be in 70s or 90s?
Let's go with the 70s.
We're going to stick in the 70s then. This is the same year as Fat City, 1972. Imagine if I go, it's The Godfather. Have you heard of this one? No, this is a film that I had been a little bit on my radar because of one image I'd known about, which is the picture of Lee Marvin with a gun in kind of like this field.
Right.
And this is a movie called Prime Cuts. Have you seen Prime Cuts?
No, I haven't.
Crime.
This is from director Michael Ritchie, and I've got a little copy here for you.
Good.
The three central performances in this: Lee Marvin, Gene Hackman, and Sissy Spacek.
I love Lee Marvin. And Sissy Spacek. I mean, this is great.
This is, and what, Gene Hackman you think sucks or what?
I'm okay with Gene Hackman. No, we're good. We're good.
But even thinking about Lee Marvin and Gene Hackman, they don't feel like the same generation of actors. Like
Yeah.
different schools. Sissy Spacek's first performance in a film as well, and
Right.
all three of these kind of coalesce together to become something quite powerful. The whole premise is a group of ruthless Chicago mob enforcers are sent to Kansas City to settle things with the owner of a slaughterhouse who's taken money that is not his to keep, and it's kind of like this human trafficking in there. It's a really nasty piece of pulp cinema. Fascinating to see like this great comedic, satirical director, Michael Ritchie, playing this space without winking. He did The Candidate, he did Fletch.
Yeah.
And seeing him do this, it's like, no, this is fairly straight. It's funny, it's got moments of humor, but it's like straight up pulp and really gritty, really like quite hard, like a hard genre picture.
Yeah.
And I think it just works so beautifully. It's one of the things I discovered recently that has hardly strayed from my thoughts. I think you'll really dig this one, and I'm glad I got one at least that you haven't seen
That's
before.
great. No, this looks like a good pick. I'm happy to dive in on that one.
Well, I'm going to give you pick number 2 as well anyway.
Yeah,
even
here we
though,
go.
even though
It could
I've
be
already
2 for 2.
I could. Let's see how we go. The stakes are being raised for me. Double or nothing right now.
Yeah.
96, one of my favorite directors as well, Abel Ferrara.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen many Abel films. Have you seen The Funeral?
Yes.
Crime.
Okay, this was one of the first ones I thought of.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like taking The Godfather in a microcosm,
Mm.
which I think is also similar to Inside, where it could have this epic scope of a crime film,
Yeah.
but it kind of takes everything down to like these bare essentials.
Yeah.
And The Funeral is basically, for those that haven't heard of it, because I hadn't heard of it until like maybe the last 3 years.
Right.
It is a funeral for a brother in this crime family, and then the two other brothers are around. They kind of have to embark on this emotional journey of vengeance for him. But it's like a fascinating gangster film because it plays with intellect in a really interesting way. You see gangster films that play with spirituality a lot, but I think this plays with intellect in an interesting way.
Yeah.
But then it's got, once again, 3 really different actors playing these brothers. Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And then you've got Chris Penn. And then you've got Vincent Gallo as their brother, who is like a more sensitive, tragic figure.
Yeah,
Who
I love in this as well. I mean, I got a soft spot for Vincent Gallo most of the time.
Yeah, a lot of us have to admit to it. A
You
lot
have
of us
to.
in
You're
our
not,
field
you're not
have
supposed to, but he's the devil on.
Yeah, we ignore his website, but we like some of his movies.
He's delicious, and as a presence on screen, he's again just like a self-sabotager in life as well as in film.
Yeah.
And a camera loves that.
Yeah.
Like he's just so magnetic. And it's a really good triangle between those 3 characters, like you say. That's really good. And it's a good era for Abel Ferrara.
I know.
He kind of comes and goes.
Well, in some ways.
Yeah.
There is a quote attributed to Vincent Gallo saying, I barely worked with Abel in this movie because he was
yeah.
high on
He was
meth
high,
the
that's
whole
right.
time.
Yeah, I know.
He spent the whole movie pickpocketing me in my dressing room.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting film, but like those three performances so fascinating.
Yeah, great.
Well, I'm glad I got 1 out of 2.
No, I'm there. I'm down to revisit. It's been ages since I saw that. I'm keen. I'm going to come back to The Funeral.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
That sounded quite intense the way you said it that way. We're all going to come back to The Funeral at some point in time. But Charles, thank you so much for joining us here in the Last Video Store.
Thank you. It's been great. It's been an honor to return to the roots.
Oh, good to have you back. Good to have you back, mate. We'll give you a bit of an employment here as well now, I think. But thank you so much. You picked up Inside, your new release film, which I highly recommend everyone else going to go see that in the cinema while it is in cinemas. And then we've got my recommendation to you, Prime Cut, The Funeral. You also picked up Fat City and The Earrings of Madame De. Beautiful selection, if I don't say so myself.
Thank you. Let's make sure people watch those movies.
I think
we've got to bring them back.
You'd even have to send a letter off to the government for these ones.
I'm going to get back and start writing. I just got to write to people. You've got to get this movie.
You've got to get it in.
Letter writing. It's just like you just sound like you're ready to become an assassin or something.
Yeah, when the podcast gets cancelled and it becomes text-based, that's what we're doing.
The Last Video Store.
Thank you for checking out The Last Video Store with me, your host, Alexei Toliopoulos. Please subscribe, follow, share the podcast amongst your friends as well. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, Last Video Store Batuta. So check us out and share us in all of those places. And if you want your own bespoke customized recommendation from me, you can submit an online order at any of those places, in a comment, in a 5-star review, with your weeklies and your new release pick, and I will come to you like I did at the top of this episode and give you a recommendation based on your taste. So thank you very much. Love you, love movies.